Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian, joined as always by my good mate Lockie, and another week, another unconvincing win to dissect, and we've won two on the bounce now, and it weirdly doesn't feel like it. It seems at the moment, for me anyway, that no matter the results, the way in which we are playing, add on the injuries, add on just the general weird vibe around Carlton at the moment, all of that is just zapping away any enjoyment I'm having over football right now. Lockie, how are you? And is that how you're feeling with everything Carlton as things stand?
Pretty well summarized, mate, for sure. I had this mindset going into this little patch after the bye where I'm like, I really want to look at everything with a positive lens and not let any of the little things kind of drag me down. But they find a way, even when we're undefeated since the bye, as you said before we turned this on.
And that's right. Like, there is obviously we got the win in this game, but there are so many frustrations from the wider supporter base after the performance against West Coast. Where do you think those frustrations stem from, and where do they really stem from for you?
I think for me, it's all about the expectations, isn't it? The expectations into the Voss era, the expectations at the start of this season, the expectation going into this game. And then at quarter time, when I'm telling the people that I'm watching the game with that this is going to be a 100-point win, and I'm setting myself up for failure when I set those expectations, I think, for these boys.
And you jump in quarter time, back of your head. Surely this week is the one that we don't let it slip, that we just finally go on with it. West Coast, it was horrific from West Coast. They were playing so poorly. We were almost better than we've been. And we weren't necessarily playing well either doing it. I think that was probably the difference in this game, where against Essendon, we were just, perfect. It was almost perfect football. This time round, it was still scrappy. We were missing chances. We're almost somehow stuffing up the easiest goals ever, but still finding a way to get another one 2 seconds later, to then only kick 2 goals in the second half. You just, all my mind can think of, which maybe this isn't healthy. Maybe we just need to enjoy these wins. But all I can think is next week, the week after, when we play anyone that isn't West Coast, if you put any pressure on us, we're not winning a game playing the way we did on the weekend.
Yeah, that thought was definitely in my mind during this one. We knew, or you and I discussed going in, that we didn't feel like we were going to be able to take a lot out of some of these games anyway, so as like a baseline. But yeah, I mean, going into this, we were like, is there a way that we can see that we don't, like, if we get challenged hard in this game, that we don't change our game style significantly, or we don't crumble under the pressure? And we didn't really get pushed properly in this game with like a big run of goals or anything like that. Like, it was just kind of that just got a few incremental goals. But as we talked about in the podcast last week, I was feeling pretty like meh after the game, watching it live, and then watching the replay yesterday and kind of looking a bit closer at the third and fourth quarters, which wasn't a fun exercise. I was a bit more like, okay, like, Akers doesn't miss that goal line goal. There's a couple of other weird ones that we just miss. Motlop takes a mark 0.5 seconds after the siren. Suddenly, it is a 50-point win, and it's a little easier to swallow. That's my kind of glass half full.
I mean, I'm sure you thought it. I'm sure we all thought this when Akers missed that, which was not even about this game. It was just, thank God he kicked it against Melbourne a few years back, because he almost missed it then. And this was basically the same thing again. And all I could think at that time was, look, I'm not happy you've missed this, but at least you did it now. I can't imagine what it would have felt like a few years back. But yeah, there's so many wasted chances. And I particularly thought about that in the third quarter. Sorry, not in the third, in the second quarter, because we were still dominating, but we truly didn't end the contest at halftime. Obviously, the margin wasn't enough that West Coast would ever get back into that, truly. But there was so many opportunities in that second term to just make it 100 points and the game is completely done. A lot of entries from deep that were just hack dump kicks into our forward line, when in the first quarter it felt like we were really looking for those little leads. And the frustration for me was around, like I've spoken in the past few weeks, it was those experienced players that were doing it. It was Doherty, it was Akers from outside 50, taking that shot, trying to kick the goal when first quarter and when we're playing our best football, we're not doing that. I wonder if parts of it was the opposition thinking, oh, it's West Coast. Let me dine in and have a bit of fun here rather than continuing to just apply ourselves. Do you think the margin that we've had in a few of these games early on, or the opposition, are causing us to maybe take the foot off the pedal and not keep that concentration, that level that we probably require against those top teams?
I definitely felt that was the case in this game. It's hard for me to put that on some of these other ones against sides that we know are of quality. But the Akers miss was the perfect example. Like, you see his facial expression throughout the whole play. Like, he is just going through the motions. It was so clear. So, yeah, I think it's hard to not put it kind of down to that. And then that's a weird discussion in itself, where probably at quarter time, some people are thinking, let's make this margin as big as possible. And other fans might be thinking, okay, from here, no injuries. Like, whatever we can to get out of this healthy is great, which can kind of be conflicting thoughts, because would you have rathered, this is a very weird hypothetical, but like, would you rather a 100-point win with the injuries that we had, or a 30-point win and we come out with a clean slate? I think the answer is probably the latter, right?
It probably is. And then we ended up getting the worst of both worlds.
Exactly.
In the end. Exactly. So I totally get your point. And just to throw it on you for this perspective, but is it as simple as we lose Charlie, he gets subbed off, that hurts the structures, obviously, without Harry? Maybe the perspective does change to, well, let's just preserve, let's not get any more. We then later on lose Hudson and what that does to your structures. Or is that an excuse we just can't be using? I'm really interested to know your thoughts, and then all the thoughts of everyone listening as well, because it's such a weird period right now where we're so far from our best football. We're showing in glimpses that we can put on scores, but it's not all perfect. And I just want to know what everyone's thinking. So drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments below if you're watching there. If you're listening in audio form, head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner. Let us know your thoughts there. But yeah, Lockie, where does it kind of all sit with you?
Yeah, it's actually a great question, I think. And it's insanely nuanced. Like, we hate using injuries as an excuse for anything. And all clubs have injuries and all those classic lines that you hear. But watching this on replay, like, I kind of didn't even realize when I watched it live, it's like, oh my God, Akers is rucking. And on the replay, I was like, gee, Gov has been, I felt like a really good target in this game. And he looked a bit more comfortable up forward, I thought, than he did the previous week. And then I'm like, oh my God, he's the only key forward in his forward line. I know we're going up against an inexperienced back line, but you can't honestly say that didn't play any factor, because if we're going into this forward line and the targets are just Durden and Motlop and Fantasia, we're not our best team.
Yeah, I definitely agree it's a factor. And I think where I'd probably separate it, and I'm not saying you're not, but to only kick 2 goals in the second half against West Coast, particularly after what we had done, even just in the first quarter, completely unacceptable. And then I'd say the gap between the Charlie and O'Keefe injuries, there's still plenty of time for you to figure out other avenues to goal. As soon as Hudson goes down, well, it is really tough to try and string things together without that height and that connection. But what keeps transpiring after quarter time, after half time, it almost needs to be studied about the difference you're getting with Carlton right now. And it's just zapping that enjoyment. Like I said at the top of this episode, I can't just sit there like I thought I was going to at quarter time. Finally, I can sit back, relax, and just try to get some fun back in footy. Fogarty's kicked 3 goals. How good's this? Just almost take the piss a little bit. And that's quite disrespectful to West Coast. But right now, there's no enjoyment. I need to get something. We got it earlier in the season against West Coast. I just really wanted that. And maybe that's that expectation you're speaking about, where we're just not getting the fun right now.
And it's funny for me to have that expectation when the most consistent thing this season is the fact that our first quarters are great and then the rest isn't. Like, why did I have I have that expectation? Why did I think that this was going to be the game that would be different? And I'm going to be thinking that going into this North game too, and at quarter time in this North game. It's just, it just felt a bit of a different way that it happened in this second half, which is why I wasn't as upset on the replay. But I'm definitely with you. Completely unacceptable that any team would kick 2 goals and a half against the defense we're going against.
Yeah. And I guess talking a bit about that expectation, do you feel it's just the whole entire club at the moment, and maybe just the weird communication that seems to come out of us at times? Obviously, we can dissect Voss and his press conferences like we do every single week, but it feels like that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I turn to more maybe Brian Cook's comments, if you caught any of that this week, where he was basically saying there's a little bit of impatience, with Carlton supporters. And I get that to a point. And I think that is something that kind of holds us back. And it's why we're so animated. It's why there is such a level of frustration, because we hold on to so many years, whether it's 30 years, 20 years, 10, or just the 4 years. We're holding on to the baggage. And I get that. But Cookie himself came out at the start of this year and said the expectation's top 4. So then to say, I guess the level of frustration is maybe overboard, that's where I'm a bit stuck with just the verbiage and the rhetoric that kind of is coming out of the club, and I guess that misalignment with the fan base. And I brought this up a little while ago, and it just feels so true, at least right now, that not to single out one person in Brian Cook, because we don't hear a lot from him. We don't know a lot that goes on behind doors, but there is this lack of connection I'm feeling from Brian Cook and the fan base. It doesn't feel like he's truly got us and wanted to buy into us. He's wanted to try and change us rather than come along with us and evolve us as we go. And as soon as things start to go bad like they are this season, then because he hasn't taken us along for the journey, it just feels like there's more disconnection and disharmony. And that's kind of where I am right now. The communication we're getting, telling us we're making top 4, that's the expectation. Or hang on, we're probably not even going to make finals, don't know where we're at. And why are we frustrated? It just feels like there's so many weird mixed signals going on right now. How do you kind of feel that connection at this stage?
Yeah, I'm definitely not feeling the connection that I want to. I haven't seen the Cookie's comments in particular, but it's obviously a really interesting time for him and Graham, and this transition, which is seemingly like, it seems like Cookie's almost kind of out the door, quote unquote, with this. So it's a weird time for him, I guess, to be addressing things as well. Yeah, your points around baggage are so spot on. We've referenced it plenty of times, but even the round 1 baggage is, I think, a factor in all this. And it makes me think to myself, like, if we just won that game, would things even feel different? Not necessarily about ladder position, but just all that expectation and hype that was built in the preseason that came into that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to, like I said 2 weeks ago, I really kind of reflected and tried to say, how can I make sure that I get that joy back in these games, even in losses? How you and I did in the Teague era, and we would find that joy in every game, and would be able to talk for 90 minutes about a 50-point loss and all the positives. And we're going to look a bit more to the future later in this episode, and hopefully be able to have that positive lens. But it's tricky too at times.
Yeah, and I think it all kind of goes hand in hand with, it's obviously that expectation component, but it is this cliff that seems to be there that wasn't there during those losses. There was always, as bad as it was, the hope was seemingly, look at the age of the players. We've still got X amount of years left. They're building towards something. We've got time to get it right. When Teague didn't work, it was, okay, well, at least there's still time to kind of course correct. Whereas now you start looking ahead, you look at Cripper, 30s coming, 30s here. Oh no, what's going to happen? This iteration of Carlton, it feels like the shelf life is coming to the doorstep. It is right here, right now. So that's probably where that frustration lies. We're holding on to the baggage of what has previously been there, and now we're holding on to baggage that hasn't even arrived yet, of just the prospect of what might happen, that we've gone through all this pain. We thought we were going to hit at least, whether it was a premiership or not, because I think we can all say they're so hard to win. It wasn't that it was all for a premiership, but it was at least 4, 5, 6 years of finals, top 4, knocking down the door, maybe at least making a grand final and seeing what could happen.
Yeah.
If this iteration of Carlton all of a sudden ends, Vossi's gone, we might need to shake the playing list up, and all we got was one game better than the Brett Ratton Juddy era, that's just not good enough. And so I think that's obviously where all this frustration lies. And it's really hard to, I think, just strap yourself out of that and try to move on, because I'm looking at the ladder now when obviously a lot has to go right. We don't have a lot of leeway. The form isn't there. I'm not saying we're going to make finals, but finals chatter isn't ridiculously out of the conversation right now, but it just feels like it is because of everything else around the club right now.
And I guess that's, hearing you talk like that is the way that I try and draw optimism out of that, is that I don't, like, we know how quickly things can change. And I know that sometimes that's not the thing to say, but I know that if we do manage to win these next couple, which we think that we should, and then there's Collingwood, and if by some way we win that game and we're on this 5-game winning streak, I promise you that the energy on this is going to be different, and that's not going to be intentional and conscious. We are just going to be feeling up and about. There's every chance that the absolute opposite happens and we drop this weekend's game, but let's hold on to that hope that it can change really quickly, the feeling.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we rock up every single week. It's why we still do the podcast, because we're always going to be thinking optimistically and hoping it can turn. I've said it. I feel like I have to say it every single time we get to this stage. But like, if you don't have that optimistic side that maybe things can ever turn, then it makes it so much harder to rock up next week. And we're going to do a bit of an exercise this week, because it feels weird to talk about these games. I don't know how much we can get out of them. We're going to dive into the list, the future, or the out of contract players this season, and trying to see if it is as bad as we think it is, whether there is hope for this to turn in the short term, medium, and long term. Very excited to get into that, but we do need to tie a bit of a bow on this game against West Coast. So, was there anything to be taken away? Anything that could have been learned? Any positives? If we're going with the glass half full hat, because we got the win 2 in a row, there needs to be some level of positivity. Lockie, what did you like from the game?
Well, the first quarter was enjoyable. And like you said, it was quite different to the Essendon game, where the scoreline was similar, and the method was also kind of the same, I thought, but the execution of it was very different. Like, there was just so many weird, almost mess ups for goals, weird handballs, all that kind of thing that kind of took a little bit of the shine off that. But again, I was going into quarter time being like, all we have to do is the same thing the next quarter and the next quarter. And this is the key to us. Like, this is everything that I want to see in terms of our game style, and the defense is meshing up well, and the midfield is clicking, and the forward line, we're lowering the eyes going in there. So, yeah, not
to go immediately negative, but that Fogarty goal where gets the mark, runs off, handballs to Gov, stuffs it up, Gov taps it back, and he almost misses, but it dribbles through. If someone hasn't seen the West Coast game, show them that clip, and it's like, that sums up the game.
It does.
We tried our hardest to make everything look difficult, but we rolled in and won. That is it. But
yeah,
I think, the positives are still that, and it feels very Michael Voss in saying this, but
okay,
there is still so much that is going well in these poor performances. The first quarter's there are still these moments. The Cooper Lord left foot into the 50. I think
love that.
Some magnets are getting moved around. Some are finally kind of coming to fruition. Like Ollie Hollands continues to play and showcase his talents, providing so much drive off halfback, a move that we're all a little bit nervous about early into the season. He's grown into that perfectly. We've thrown Gov back down forward, and that seems to be working way too well. We obviously brought him in as a forward. That turned to shit. We moved him back as a defender. Everyone thought, wow, what have we been doing? He's clearly a defender. That kind of fell away a little bit. Now he's gone back forward. Feels like he's always been a forward, Lockie. So where do you kind of sit on where Mitch McGovern should be playing and about this role moving forward?
Wow. Yeah, like I said about him, I felt like it definitely looked more comfortable this week than last week. I feel like there was a few moments last week where I was like, why don't you just do what you do in defense? Like there was a moment against Essendon, not to go back to the Essendon game too much, where he got outmarked by someone quite small in like a contested marking situation. And he looked like he had no idea how to fly for the ball when he's in the forward line versus in the defense. Like this is your bread and butter, mate. So I thought that looked better in this game. God, I mean, I like having 3 solid marking options in the forward line. That's been my stance all year, depending on who the different players are. So right now, we don't have really any choice that if we want to do the 3, then he has to be one of them. But I still like him as a defender better.
I think looking at him as a defender, he's fine, but I want to kind of move past him now. That's, I guess, where my mindset is going. Haynes has taken over his intercept role, is probably playing it better. I think defensively, he's a lot stronger.
Yeah.
And then in our defense, I'd probably prefer to go smaller than have a McGovern down there as well. I think we're a lot more dynamic when he's not, which means with Harry out at the moment, it's almost kind of fell into his lap perfectly to play down forward. And he's someone right now, I'm on the fence to jump forward a little bit. I'm really on the fence about whether we retain him moving forward past this season.
Wow.
Simply,
I'm surprised.
Is he taking us forward? Is he symptomatic of this player that has been there for a long time, but their form fluctuates so much, they're inconsistent in their injury history? I know he's been better as of late, but that's still something that kind of lingers to a degree. Is it time to bite the bullet and just get that next wave in that maybe aren't holding the baggage of the panicky Carlton? And that's kind of where I'm looking and trying to evaluate from here on to the end of the season. So I think for McGovern, now that there's a different role, well, either it kind of nails him down as, okay, he's another forward option. Will that work in the 3? Or does he stay on the list because, well, he can play both and that's just perfect depth, get him really low kind of wages and run it for a year or 2?
Yeah. I mean, we were considering guys like Marchbank a year ago as whether keeping them on the list is good just for a bit of safety. And I think McGovern is definitely a big step above that. But I love that you're questioning this, because we have to be questioning all of these things at this stage. The thing that comes to mind for me is then, what do we see over these next 10 weeks? Does O'Farrell get another crack in the ones? Is Lemmy going to come in this week? Like, if we see a bit more from some of these types of players before the end of the season, I'd be more open to that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then again, it's kind of jumping forward a little bit, but certain camps are saying, do you trade one of, a Harry or Charlie? And then if you entertain that and one of those goes to allow you to do other things, well, if McGovern is able to be a reliable second tall option, and you've seen it for half this season, knowing that was his role when he came to the club, maybe gives you a bit more confidence to pull the trigger on that move if that's where you're looking at. But I definitely want to have that discussion a little bit later because I think it's a really juicy one. Were there any other real positives for you out of this game, or anything you kind of maybe want to see a little bit more of in the next few weeks?
I'm always excited to talk about individuals when we do this part of episode breakdowns or match breakdowns. This one, I'm not so much.
Yeah.
Like there was some really nice signs at times from Lord. I thought Carroll looked more confident than he has in the last month or so. So some of those things, Chincotta, I'll call him out as well, playing a bit of a different role, look good as well, but nothing to write home about from me.
Yeah, Chincotta was one I had written down. Simply, I think last week the comment was, look, you shut down, great, you're a really solid tagger, but only got the 3 disposals. What can happen the other way? Can you add something offensively? We asked the question. I think he answered really well this week. Really handy role player. At times, maybe we have too many of those role players, but if he's giving that output most weeks, I think there's definitely a spot for him in this team, knowing he can then go shut down if you need to. The question mark's always been, can he produce it? Again, it's West Coast. We need more sample size, but I think you have to call it out when you see it. And then the other component was a guy like Jackson Binns, who working his way into this team has been really difficult for him. I think a lot of players on our list at the moment, almost kind of instant call-ups. He seems to be the one who gets those disposals in the 2s, but can't find his way into this starting lineup, gets an opportunity, wasn't perfect, but for him to just continue to find the ball, 26 disposals, the 3rd highest for us behind Cher and Hewitt, means he's putting himself in the right spots. I think that's definitely got to be pleasing, knowing he might get a bit of a run with Walsh's injury.
Yeah, agreed. He's one of those in that cohort that we've seen the least of, so very happy for him that he's getting a crack.
Yeah, and then moving on, clearly a big issue is those starts, the big first quarters, not going on with it. Not sure if you caught it, but Charlie Curno's comments after the game really were strange for me. So they're obviously asking him about his injury and whatnot, but they asked him obviously about the first quarter and it sort of disappearing a bit. And he basically just straight out said, yeah, it was amazing. Love that first quarter, how the ball gets delivered, but obviously that's not sort of sustainable for 4 quarters. And I just found that so strange because I really wish they sort of probed him a little bit more and said, what's not sustainable about that? Because you're never going to get that kind of access. But 1, why are we playing it if it's not sustainable? 2, why is it not sustainable? 3, does that mean this is like an actual directive of we can't play that way for 4 quarters, so start and then sit back? So is the change in play actually tactical? It's raised so many questions for me, and I just kind of wanted to get your first thoughts on that because I was really taken back by we're playing not sustainable football on purpose almost.
Yeah, well, I didn't see that interview, but yeah, my question is the same as yours, basically, which is, are you saying that it's not sustainable for anyone or it's not sustainable for us right now? And that this Carlton team can't sustain that. Like, is it not sustainable in his opinion, in principle, or in the execution that we're doing? Which is 2 very different things, I guess. Because agree, we would say it's not sustainable right now because we haven't seen it once this season, but I don't see why it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and is he, to give him a bit of an out in this? Is Charlie saying it's not sustainable in the way of you're never going to have 4 easy quarters and therefore it's a bit more of a fight? Maybe he was going down that route, but I think the worry off the back of this, and again, this could just be diving into something that doesn't exist, but if the mentality from one of our leaders, I believe he's in our leadership group, the captain of the forward line.
Forward leader, yeah.
If his mentality is how we play so well is not sustainable and we're probably not going to do that for 4 quarters, well, then what flow-on effect does that have? Because almost delusionally, you should be thinking, we can just keep doing this. Let's keep going. So it was very, very bizarre phrasing, I think, from Charlie after the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to sit with that one.
We'll definitely see over the next few weeks. Hopefully someone asks Vossi
Yeah.
his thoughts on those comments. Please, some journo needs to do their job adequately. But wrapping up this game, Lockie, I really struggled with this. So I'm going to get you to do it first so I can hopefully just steal your answers. But your 3-2-1 votes for this win against West Coast.
Yeah. Didn't love the 3 this week. I've gone Chera 3, Gov for 2 as my overperformer. And I'm going to give Chincotta some love with the 1.
Yeah, very, very similar. I've gone Chera the 3, Chincotta the 2, and then I gave 1 vote to George Hewitt because I was really struggling to know whether it was Chera or Hewitt for the 3. But yeah. Do you think it's a positive thing that it's a midfield of Chera and Hewitt that are some of our better performers at the moment? You know, normally it's been kind of Cripps and Walsh and that like. So is it a positive that they're stepping up, or is it still tinged a little bit where they're playing our best, but that best probably isn't winning a lot of matches? Because as much as I'm giving Chera the 3, I still don't feel like his influence is amazing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't think that if this is the best that we get from them, that this is the premiership midfield. I think overall it is positive. I think we'd be more disappointed if we were at this stage of the season and Cripps was leading the Brownlow again. I think that would not be something that we would be enjoying. We know that Cripps can still turn it on when he needs to, but it feels to me like this feels like a directive to go more through those two and be less reliant on Cripps. So I do take that as a positive. But I'm also with you that Chera, like, is he in career best form? Maybe. But I still want more.
Yeah. I think his season just before he did his hamstring late, was 23. I think that was his best. I feel like he was still a little bit more impactful. But I think you could say our center clearances and everything was a lot more impactful back then. So yeah, there's still definitely levels for it, but
yeah,
definitely a positive. Knowing, and I feel like I'm going to absolutely curse him here. So if it happens, feel free to genuinely blame me. But going into the season, the big worry was obviously those hamstrings. Up until now, he's had a clean run at it. So I think that's just a real positive of what we've seen so far, that we probably didn't expect him to even play, let alone get to this kind of form. So agreed. I think it's definitely a positive. But let's try and fix this, Lockie. Everyone's really negative.
Love to.
And I think that's absolutely fair. So it's also something because mid-season content, mid-season buy, we normally go through a lot of this talk, but we missed it this season. So we kind of have to do it now. It feels like the absolute perfect time. Everyone's saying, do we need to blow up the list? Are we shit? Is this the end? What is going on? Are we good enough? So this is kind of the perfect time to dive into that, have the conversation, gain a bit of perspective, and just take stock to find out where we are and what changes maybe need to be made, which also allows us to focus on a few different things to look at from now to the end of season. That's not saying the season's done, but it just allows some added context for what is going on. So firstly, I want to just take a look at everyone who's out of contract now, and I want to get your trade, delist, sort of re-sign out of it. And I want everyone watching, listening at home to do the exact same and leave it in the comments or let us know at Navy Blue Corner on the socials. So Alex Chincotta.
Re-sign.
I agree. Billy Wilson.
Yes, as well.
Brody Kemp.
Interesting one. I definitely would want to re-sign him, but I think he'd be a player that would be in discussions.
Do you think he has to stay because of the injury? The value of moving him on isn't there?
Well, Bailey Smith is the first name that pops into my mind, who probably would have gone for more were he fit and healthy. So yeah, I see that. But it's hard to know what the conversations are behind the scenes with him because it seemed like he was almost close to getting moved last year.
Gun to your head, what do you think his value could be?
Oh my God.
Because if it was a pick in the 40s or something last year that St Kilda were offering that we said wasn't good enough, I think that probably is the value now due to the injury. And
I would not.
I don't know. I just don't think that that's worth moving on.
Cannot be worth it considering like his age, the era that he's entering into, and what we saw earlier this season. The flexibility, no, not worth it. Keep.
Yeah, fair. Tough one here. You haven't really seen him play, but Flynn Young.
Yeah, with players like this, I always opt, I guess, to re-sign because he'd be, a very small part of the cap.
Francis Evans.
Yeah, D-list for mine.
Yeah, I agree. Harry Charlson.
Similar to Flynn, I'd say. Like one of the youngest players on the list.
Yep. Interesting one. Harry Lemmy.
Does he get a game this week? The Lem Dog.
If Charlie doesn't play and he doesn't, I think he's absolutely categorically gone. But yeah, I think regardless, where do you see it? Is he someone you'd give another year to? He's had some decent weeks in a row now in the VFL. Feels like the first time he's actually putting it on the scoreboard. So is it just now that it's finally turning for him? Is that worth an extra year?
I haven't been watching the VFL this year to minimize my pain.
Don't blame you.
It's hard for me to be super opinionated. I think what you said is perfect. If we don't see him for the rest of this season, there is the opportunity here for him to play. So if they still don't have faith, I'd probably have to say deep.
Yeah.
It's 4 years, right?
It's definitely 3. It may be 4, but I think I've got him as gone now just because we haven't cited him. But I think he's one that it's really what happens between now and then. Jack Silvani, I think, is an obvious keep there. Absolutely. Jesse Motlop for you, a much maligned player.
Yeah, I think we have to keep trying.
Yeah. I still think he's our still best so young. Small forward that we have. Matt Carroll.
Oh, re-sign that man.
I agree. Mitch McGovern, the man I am floating as a potential. Is he that kind of player that we need to start moving on from to improve?
It's such a great
we can't. I guess my thinking is that we can't keep running back what we have. We've seen bringing in a guy like a Matt Carroll, even Cowan to a degree. These are the guys who we ideally believe will kind of take us forward. Mitch McGovern, we're not going to get any more out of him. So do we try to maybe have a slightly lower floor, but look for that higher ceiling right now?
The salary is always a question that is hard for us to know what he would take for a year or two here. My gut still says that I would want to retain him. When I look at some of the other guys around that age, someone like a Doc, where I feel like his position would be less missed on the list.
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of in my
giving enough.
He's in my limbo at the moment. Nick Newman.
That's fair. Oh, well, yeah. Kind of similar boat, I guess. My gut says re-sign.
I've got him for another year. I think worst case, he can be the captain of the twos and develop some of these younger guys if he isn't in our best 22, kind of like what I maybe saw Doc being this season. Yeah, I feel like those leadership qualities are really there for a Newman if he isn't able to get back to being in our best team. And then, Nick Haynes in a similar age bracket. Is he someone you're keeping around for another season?
Yeah. Like his output has been better than I expected.
Yeah, I think so. And he's someone I like in that mold where there's that big potential throughout next season. He sort of passes the torch over to an O'Farrell. And I think without him, then there really isn't anything else in that kind of third tall key defender, particularly if I end up moving a guy like Mitch McGovern, just makes sense to me. I think his output has shown enough that even if it does drop, we've got his next player to come through. And at times in some of these positions, we maybe haven't had that leadership. So I think that's probably an added bonus. Orazio Fantasia played the last few weeks, but out of contract.
It's a funny one because, like you said, we're going to have to make some changes. So in terms of guys that are not in an age where they're going to improve with a pretty bad injury history and not great outputs, I'd have to say D-list.
Yeah, I agree. All those reasons. I can't add a lot more. Rob Monaghan, few years now to try and develop this Irishman. Is it continue or cut your losses and see if you can find the next kind of Cat B rookie out there? Another ex-volleyball ruckman. Who knows?
Yeah. It's a hard one. It feels bad. I feel bad saying D-list for players I literally know nothing about, but yeah, 21 at the end of the year. Can you picture him running out there for us? It's hard to picture.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen really any positive signs. And that's not trying to be harsh here. He's a guy who's never played the sport, so it is incredibly difficult. But knowing we've got a few kind of academy players coming through the draft now as well, I'd have to relook and see where the Cat B list spots are at. However, if we need to bring one in, I feel like it's a cut your losses kind of deal at this stage. He's gone for me. A really tough one, Sam Doherty.
So fucking hard because of everything that he is. I can't even give an answer for this one because, like you said before, like there's the leadership, there's all of those kind of things positive, but then he is one of the few people that has been through this entire era, maybe not in a positive way.
Yeah,
it's really going to depend, I think, on the output of the next couple of months.
I agree. I feel like it's probably retire on your terms, Doc. Have a really solid end to the season. Go out on your terms. I really don't want to see him stay on for a season and it end like it really looked like it was going to early this season.
Yeah, valid.
I just feel like it'd be such a sad end. Tom de Koning, I guess I'll kind of park because I want to have a bit of a conversation around that. So Will White, I will end on here.
Yeah, Will White, I'd re-sign for me. I think when I look at the small forwards, we're going to be moving Fantasia and Evans out with this. I'd be persisting with him.
Does it weird you out that he's 21?
I mean, it does weird me out. But he's still younger than Motlop, who still feels really young.
I think I'd be fine with keeping him. He would probably be someone I would do the old, hey, buddy, we would love to keep you, but we're going to see how many list spots we have throughout
definitely
preseason. If we've got one, you've probably got it. But we'll just wait and see. So
I won't be shedding any tears if that doesn't happen.
I think I will regardless because I've fallen in love with him over the last few months since he debuted. But de Koning, let's have a de Koning chat. I feel like it's been a while since we have. He's in the news again this week. Cal Toomey said $1.1 million offer to stay at Carlton, 1.7 to go to the Saints. Those are the figures that he is throwing out there from his sources. Where do you sit on the keep or move on de Koning? And the question I will throw at you as well is, do the positives of him leaving with where the club is at right now outweigh the negatives?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with currently my pulse check of what I think will happen is I think that he will leave.
Yeah.
Just purely for the money difference, I think is just too significant for him. Yeah, God, there's so many different ways we're going to have this conversation, isn't there? The first thing that comes to mind is say that he leaves, who is rucking in round one next year?
Yeah.
We'd probably all agree that we wouldn't be very excited about going into next year as Pitto as our number one guy.
Not excited at all.
So we're getting Marshall back, for example, in this. Or you look like you wanted to give something there.
Oh, I think we have to. I think our starting ruckman next year is not currently at the club if De Koning leaves.
Agreed.
I don't think you can trust Hudson yet. The interesting part then is Pito is a great backup ruckman. If your ruckman gets injured, you have him there. Hudson, can he take the step? Starting to get worried with these hamstring injuries. He took a specky last season, was out for about 12 weeks. He finally gets a game and he's seemingly injured it again. Yep. Not ideal. But if they see Hudson as this heir apparent for the next few years, but needs a little bit more development, well, then what kind of ruckman are you bringing in? And I feel like, just to throw some names out there that have kind of been linked that are available, you've got a Riley O'Brien as an unrestricted free agent from Adelaide. Because if I guess, Sam Draper goes to Adelaide, they probably don't need O'Brien. So in this situation of we think it's Hudson O'Keefe, he needs a couple of years, I don't think that's the worst thing you could do. I don't love it because I just don't think O'Brien is anywhere near great anymore. But you could potentially sell me that if the idea is we've got the next guy, it's just one season, because what's the point in bringing in maybe a Nick Bryan from Essendon who's out of contract, can't get a game at Essendon, and he be your number one ruckman if you go into preseason and Hudson O'Keefe's probably going to take his spot. It just feels kind of pointless. You've also got a Sam Darcy, but you'd probably have to trade for him if they decide Freo wants to go with a Luke Jackson instead as the number one. Weirdly, you've also there got Sam Draper. If he decides he doesn't want to just go home to Adelaide, he wants to go somewhere else, he's an option. Nick Bryan, as I said, out of contract. Liam Reedy from Freo, out of contract, can't get a game behind Darcy and Jackson. Ned Moyle, you'd have to trade for him, but can't get a game behind Witts. Or do they say it's finally time for Ned Moyle? Maybe you can get Witts cheap for a couple of years. Or another random name to throw out is, I know we just got to Port, but they dropped Jordan Sweet a few weeks ago for a Vicentini. If they're maybe sick of Sweet, is he someone you could get across cheaply? And I think I'm just looking at these sort of things because it feels like ruck is a kind of easy one to replace. Premiership teams don't have amazing ruckmen necessarily. They're not the best in the competition. Pies got in Cameron for pick 62. Hawks got in Meek in a deal that it's a bit convoluted, where it was like O'Meara and a fourth for Meek and a second. So cancel O'Meara for a second. Yep. They got Meek for a fourth round pick. Gold Coast got Witts for picks 44 and 62. Port got Sweet for pick 50. So you can kind of throw away an absolute nothing pick and seemingly get a serviceable AFL ruckman. Tie that on to the fact that we get extra salary help. That's 1.1 million available now to spread or bring in maybe something else that you might need a little bit more than a ruckman if ruck isn't that big position. And on top of that, we would then get back in a first round draft pick as compensation, something we currently don't have. And knowing we might need to, we're not in this, I guess, as obvious premiership window, seeing as we might not even make the 8 this year, that would say to me we need to make some moves. Not having a first round draft pick makes that a lot more difficult. Getting one back, I'm starting to feel like all the positives are outweighing the negatives in him going. Yeah, I kind of don't think it's a great thing to keep De Koning at this stage.
I can see the listeners nodding along to plenty of those points because they're very strong and super valid. And you kind of wrapped it up in a bow there in a way that in the only way that I could really challenge it, which is that if someone listening thinks that we are a contender next year, then I do think that De Koning being here, it gives us a better chance than any of the ruckmen that you listed. So take that as for me as like your starting point, and I feel like I'm more optimistic than most, and that's the main reason why I get drawn into it. But everything that you said right there is a valid reason why it would not be the worst thing.
And is there also a case, kind of want to get your thoughts and everyone's thoughts on this. I would like to keep ideally De Koning. I think that'd be great. However, 1.1 would be so over the max I'm paying him. 800,000 is the highest I think I would want to be paying any ruckman, regardless of who they are, on a list if I'm a list manager. Knowing it's 1.1 makes me very nervous if we did retain him. I think regardless of what you're potentially getting back, the draft pick and so on, that's my big concern. I just don't think he has ever shown for more than 4 games in a row that he is worth anywhere close to 1.1 million.
And that was going to be my next point / question to you, which is we've persisted with him. You know, he was not a high draft pick. We've persisted with him for so long. We're kind of wondering when he was going to take the leap. Halfway through last year, he kind of announced himself. Come into this season, you've maybe been a little more down on his performances recently than I have in terms of positive impact. Like, do you see what we're getting now as the ceiling? Do you think that him going to St Kilda, he's going to be like, is his ceiling someone that is like a Brownlow contender or not?
I don't think it's Brownlow contender because I just don't think any ruckman is. But I do think he.
I'm talking like best. Can he be the best ruckman in the league?
I think he can. There's a possibility. I'm starting to get a little less convinced of that, but I think he can be one of the better ruckmen. Of course, I think he's better than what he's showing right now. I'm just not sure if that's 1.1. Yeah. And I'm just so hesitant looking at all the successful teams in the competition. How many of those do pay a ruckman?
Yeah.
The ones that are paying a ruckman, Collingwood tried it, got rid of it, hated it. It hamstrung them. Doggies are paying a ruckman. It's seemingly working, I would say, at least at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then who else is paying one? Melbourne. They won a flag, but maybe that wasn't the...
Luke Jackson, maybe.
Yeah.
Similar.
It's interesting. I think the bigger issue is we're paying so many other stars right now that can we afford to pay another one in that role? And you could devil's advocate and argue, because I think I've made this point previously, if you look at our midfield, it lacks a dynamic player. That's maybe why De Koning is important to us, because instead of having to go out there and get that, trying to think of a random player that maybe like an Ed Richards right now, who it's not a ridiculous star player, but someone you could maybe find and pay handsomely that is that dynamic mover in the midfield. Instead of having to go out and find that, you can manufacture that a little bit in having a ruckman that's so mobile that is hard to find. Maybe that's the trade-off. Yeah. Maybe that's why we need him so much. And that's why we're happy to pay 1.1, because it means we don't have to find another midfielder and pay him 800K. But yeah, I didn't think we'd be in this position where getting a first-round draft pick back this season feels just like the most important thing we need right now to get this little reset.
Yeah. And back to our discussion before, like you look at the guys that have height in this team that can play ruck, and if De Koning goes, and if O'Keefe is going to be injury prone, like you said, Lemmy more of a forward, but if he goes, yeah, it really is going to be about what could come back. I'm not sure how much that is kind of, I mean, it seems like it's kind of seemingly out of Carlton's hands now, if that's truthfully the offer that we're putting on the table for him, of which, if that's true, I think he'll leave. Yeah, like I said, who's going to be there round one? And for me, I still think that we can be a contending team next year. But Darcy Fort was a premiership ruckman last year. So,
do you bring him in for a season? Like, these are the kind of things I'd be looking at, because, yeah, as much as like Rowan Marshall would be then the perfect one to swing back, however, you're going to have to trade for him. And then what are you then giving your compensation pick back to the Saints? That just feels like overs. I wouldn't want to be trading much to bring in the replacement. But yeah, very interested to know how everyone's feeling in the Tom de Koning kind of saga at this stage. But talking about losing a potential star for us, the other part of this is, and the discussion that is being had, is around their salary cap tightness to a degree. I think it's overblown compared to what it is, because everyone has to pay like 90 or 95% of the cap every single season. So I don't think it's as bad as is being addressed. And how many seasons is there when Carlton's got no salary and then 950 offers gets thrown out to Will Hayward apparently, and it doesn't eventuate, but you think, well, where's that money? Because we clearly thought it was available. However, the talk is then around, do you cash in on someone right now, maybe the more picks wise, to rejig this squad? Is that a Walsh? Is that a Mackay? Where do you kind of sit in the, we need to trade someone to reset this squad?
Oh boy. I mean, it's such a hard discussion to have, because while I agree with we cannot be running back everything next season, as we have in other times, potentially like going 2023 into last year, it felt like it was very much just like no changes. Let's run this back and see if we can have a better crack at it. I do think there has to be change, but the Harry Charlie discussion always just kind of just hurts the stomach to have. But if we look objectively, Harry has not been able to be consistently on the park performing enough in recent times. So what is the market value for him? Is one of these clubs, like I have these chats with friends of that support other clubs, and almost any team in the league needs a better tall forward. So the value should be pretty high, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because I think at the moment with Harry, we know he's had his concussion issues. Then the sort of mental health break as well, the form, it's kind of just tanked his value quite a lot. If you were to entertain it, I guess I'll throw it quickly back at you. What, if you were going to accept it and sign off the trade, what would you have to be getting back compensation?
Oh my God. It's so fucking hard.
Is it like minimum 2 firsts?
2 firsts.
Because I also think there's the part of the argument that is, well, what are we doing with those firsts? Because I think just taking them to the draft isn't the right move anyway. But I think value-wise, it's at least 2. Will anyone pay that? I don't think so. As good as I think Harry is, I think there's a perception out there that that's a hard one to sell to a fan base, because the perception of the regular fan is that Harry Mackay is shit for some reason, because he missed a couple of goals one season.
Yeah.
But I just don't think you're getting that. And therefore, I don't think you'd move him on. It'd be the only one I'd entertain, simply because of the do 2 gun key forwards work. Feels like most teams are running with the 1. Have we ever truly gotten it to work, the 2 of them? Not sure. Jury very much still out.
Yeah.
However, all of this argument for me in my head goes back to, I don't think the coaching has been amazing throughout that tenure, that whole period.
Yeah.
So surely someone can make it work. And stars don't grow on trees. Surely you don't get rid of them. They're so hard to find of that caliber. Just getting rid of them for the sake of, well, that's going to turn us around, not knowing what that we're turning that into, makes me very nervous. Because I just don't, like, if you somehow turned Mackay into Zach Butters, then I think I'd absolutely bite your hand off. But I just don't think that's something that's realistic. So what are we actually getting back? And then who's playing with Charlie? Because our key forward stock's already very thin. Who goes into that role? who are we getting from another club that can sit there as that Mabior Chol kind of player, where you don't need him to be a superstar, he just needs to be serviceable. And I just don't know if they're out there necessarily.
As a devil's advocate, like you mentioned before with McGovern, like about the baggage of this era and all that kind of thing. Is he not the poster boy of that? Is he not the number one person you'd say would be carrying the baggage of, the games that he had to play under Bolton?
I think I probably would. However, his form recently was match winner. St Kilda match winner, Geelong match winner. So it also feels hard to tar him with that brush because he has been able to, at least in recent times, exercise those demons to a degree.
Yeah. It's so hard to get a feel on the value of players and how they're seen. Because like you said, obviously Butters is a whole different kind of story, but there was other names that you could throw out there where it's like midfielders versus key forwards. We could list 12 teams right now that I think would be like, oh my God, Harry Mackay, amazing. Yep. Exactly.
Walks into most teams as their number one key forward.
Yeah. So, yeah. So how does that bidding war take place? Like if teams find out that he's on the market, and then suddenly where the return, like you said, but you said you don't think we'd get like 2 good first round picks, but if we did get that, you would be happy?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not certain.
Even then, I'm not sure I would be.
Like, is that actually what we need right now? Do we need 2 first in the most compromised draft that there ever will be this season, with the amount of father-sons academy picks? Yeah. And then you don't necessarily want a future pick because Cody Walker goes in the next year. So it feels very convoluted. I feel like it'd need to be turned into a player, 1 or 2 of those first round picks. And then weirdly, if you did move a Harry, let's just say in this world, would that free up salary cap where all of a sudden you keep deconing? Because you probably wouldn't want to lose both of them.
I was going to say that before.
But is it too late in the deal to be able to maneuver that? It just, I'd need to be knowing what we're turning it into. Because how many times do you trade a star and it work in your favor? Where you go on to be better and you fix the squad. I feel like whatever you bring in, it probably makes you worse.
Yeah, I agree. And for myself, who thinks that we should still be a good team next year, we could be a great team, should be a good team, then.
So let's have a look at it. I want to kind of give a bit of firstly, let's almost do a bit of a best 22, what we kind of see being the best team now kind of into next season. And then we will try to, I guess, predict a little bit over the next 2 to 3 years, what is still this next window, what that team is going to be, looking at the youth, because previously we've looked at those 28s and over, which is where the bulk of our list is. What are those younger players like that we have right now? Is there a future for them? Do we have enough? And then from this exercise, we can hopefully see either the positions we need to fix or fill over these next few seasons. And then maybe we can go back to that conversation. Is moving a Harry the perfect thing? Will that give us the ammunition to solve these problems and maybe just get a better bearing on where things are right now? So best, I guess, 23. Well, Wiedering's going in there, clearly. I think Jack Silvani is into that back line. We'll just go the spine here. It makes it very, very easy. Cripps goes in. We then get Mackay. We get Charlie Curnow as well. De Koning in the ruck. Is the midfield as simple as George Hewitt and Adam Chera with Walshy on a wing?
Certainly is.
What other sort of key elements are you throwing in as just very obvious in there? Nick Newman into defense, regardless of injury.
With Haynes as well, I think.
Nick Haynes as well. Are you playing Ollie Hollins in defense? Or is he going to a wing?
I guess so. I think when you look at this, it has to be him and Sard that to round out the starting back line.
Yep. And then Adam Sard. Does Blake Acres still keep that other wing spot?
I mean, right now in our best 22, what we're doing right now, it's got to be.
Yeah. And then, forward line. Elijah with a big asterisk as far as quality.
Zach Williams.
Zach Williams. Motlop, I would assume, would be the other small. And then...
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Who takes the other spot? Or is this still a hole? Do we want to keep this as a... This spot is still not filled and needs to be addressed.
Let's see if there's any more obvious interchanges, because there's, I guess, Kemp and McGovern are options.
Kemp, McGovern, Carroll, Cowan are all options.
I think Kemp's of those out of all those for me.
Really?
No.
So I just don't have Kemp. I don't know. He currently doesn't exist in my head.
Yeah, I know. I hadn't thought about him for a couple of months.
But I guess we can have Kemp as a swing man, whether he's forward or in defense. I think McGovern is in there at the moment.
Yep.
Cooper Lord, you'd say, would have a spot.
Yep.
Who else? So. Who else gets in there? You've got guys like Doherty, Fantasia, I guess, Chincotta, Cottrell. Does he take a spot?
He's probably the best name out of these that we're looking at, isn't he?
And then going a bit younger than that, Durden.
Jagger.
Yeah, Jagger Smith. I think that's... I'll chuck Williams as a forward pocket. I'll bring Cottrell into the team.
Yeah.
And I think Jagger Smith. And then, that sub can just stay open for now, as it's not as important. Looking then and extrapolating that team into the future squad. Now, Nick Newman's 32, so I'm taking him out. Nick Haynes comes out due to age. Any other big ages I should be looking at here? Do you say borderline Sard and Akers come out?
I was going to say them, yeah.
And let's say De Koning's not there this season. He's gone.
Yep.
Does McGovern keep that spot? Then currently being 31.
No,
I think he's
not for the future.
Okay. George Hewitt.
Zach Williams as well.
Zach Williams, okay. He's gone. Cripps and Hewitt we're keeping because they're... Yep, okay. Now all of a sudden, that leaves a lot of spaces. We have both our back pockets and a halfback spot. We have a wing roll. We have a small forward. We have a ruckman and a spot on our bench available. Are there any key names that you see as the youngsters that maybe we haven't seen a lot of or that aren't best 22 right now that you see definitely in the next 2 to 3 years as locks into this squad to replace those players?
No, I wouldn't say as a lock. That would be... I'm interested to hear if you have locks.
I guess I do, at least in the... This is what I'm envisioning being the moves. I think O'Farrell takes the Haynes role. That's kind of what we're grooming. And then Cowan can take Newman's role, and
agreed.
At least I'm not confident he's starting, but I think Carroll is probably someone I see being in that 22 as a defender.
Yeah, I agree.
Which means there's still room for that real damaging top of the line halfback.
Do you think Hollands is going to be a halfback in the future?
Probably not. I probably see him as a winger. Then he goes back to that wing role, which means we have two spaces for those halfbacks. Anyone you see on this list at all? I feel like it's a stretch.
Apart
like
from
Billy
Carroll,
Wilson,
Billy Wilson is the hope, I guess, right?
And then in 2 to 3 years, is there anyone currently still in that squad that you think maybe form-wise doesn't have that ceiling? Like, do you think a Cottrell, a Motlop, or are we just keeping them in there for now?
Yeah, I guess Durden is a name that we didn't say either.
Not confident.
Jeez. No, neither. Not confident, but yeah. Moya is a name we haven't said, and the Kemp rally.
I think you could probably, even for the sake of this, just to maybe make it more interesting, Georgie Hewitt goes over that next little bit. Jagger Smith comes in.
Yeah.
And then Ben takes one of those midfield spots.
Yep.
Then that basically leaves you right now for this squad, 2 halfbacks, a small forward, a ruckman, and then scope maybe for someone like a Kemp to not be there, and it's another hybrid or another forward.
Yep.
Looking at this youth, Lucas Camporelli is someone that may end up taking a bit of a wing role. Maybe Ollie Hollands does stay in defense.
Maybe. Yeah.
Is there any confidence with any of these other youngsters taking a spot and this being a more solid team?
Yeah, we just can't say it for anyone that we really haven't seen at all yet. Charleston's, Billy Wilson's.
Is that concerning? Knowing we're losing some of these key players, and right now there are quite a lot of big list holes. Considering small forward was already a list hole, it's gotten bigger. Halfback was already a bit of a list hole. It's gotten a bit bigger.
Yeah.
Are you worried about the youth coming through?
The small forward is always one that seemingly we try every year to bring someone in and give them a go, or a couple in every year. No doubt we'll probably do that again this season. So maybe there'll be one that hits there. Yeah, I'm actually not like I think we talked about in a previous week. At the start of last season, I was looking at the youth and I was like, oh boy, there is really not much here. But I'm feeling more confident now with the few that came in last year's draft. Add Dean and Walker to that as well.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm feeling a lot more confident. The
halfback thing
is interesting here, though. I haven't thought about that before.
Well, right now, at least those who are under 23 into this squad, Cowan, O'Farrell, Hollands, just trying to make sure I get this exactly right. Both Hollands, actually.
Yes.
Motlop is 22. Matt Carroll is under there. Cooper Lord, Ben Camporelli. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And Smith, that's 9 already that would come into this that are on the list. You can throw in, I guess, a Cody Walker into that squad. Maybe he takes Cottrell's spot, and Cottrell can be that perfect sub, as we always know he is.
Yep.
Harry Dean's just another one that does he take an O'Farrell? Is he groomed for a Wiedering or Silvani spot down the line? It at least adds to the depth. Is that manageable, considering we've also still got the back end of this season to make those moves and bring in players? It's not as if, looking at this list, it's not like we have to do it right now. This is over 2 to 3 years as those players disappear.
Yeah.
Do you think there's enough that we can build around for the future throughout this period when we're probably going to be losing a few of this, what we saw as the premiership list, and still think we can contend with this talent? Or is this too much of a drop-off?
Well, so the first comment I'd make is, at the start of this season, Matt Carroll, I had absolutely no idea about that man, and I would have put him in the same bucket as a bunch of these other guys that had never really seen at the top level, and not convinced at all whether they'd make it or not. Suddenly, we're slotting him in here on the bench. So, with some time left before the end of the season, there's a possibility that, like a Wilson at the end of the season, we've gone from we've never seen him at the top level to, he's one of our halfbacks for the future, right?
Yeah. And again, you're banking on things you don't know necessarily, but does an Ashton Moyer, does it finally click for him and he takes one of those small forward roles? He's still 20. Sometimes those players take a little bit to develop. Who knows? But it is another option and something that is available. Ben's getting a bit of, I guess, a run of games now. Is there any scope for him to improve? Will White recently on the list, and even like a Corey, and if he gets consistency, does that turn into our small forward? Now, I'm not convinced any of those are going to take us forward necessarily, but I think there's enough there that I'm confident if those players have their natural evolution that we're seeing currently, that's still a team that can absolutely compete. I think the big thing clearly is, what are those pieces that we're filling those gaps? Because they're probably the gaps we had before if you just look at this best 22, you'd say, yeah, who's running off halfback? We probably need some help there. Looking at that forward line, there's clearly still high half forward and small forward issues. And then what's going on with De Koning? Will we need a ruckman to replace? Feel like they're the same issues. So we've kind of not needed to fill any others, which is probably the positive I was wanting to take out of this, is the natural step is there to not necessarily be worried about the youth coming through. It's about addressing the concerns we've currently got.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing. Now, are there any players that you can kind of see maybe being available, or players you'd want to be targeting that could fill those holes at the end of this season? We get a first round draft. You'd think maybe that's a small forward, let's say. Or is it another dynamic midfielder that can come in and add to it? But then looking off halfback at those that are maybe out of contract, you've got Miles Bergman that, I guess if De Koning goes, will have some cash to play with. He's also been, I guess, getting a little bit of midfield time. I wouldn't want to bring him in as that, like we did with Zach Williams. I still think his best footy is off the halfback. But depending on his price, he would be definitely a player I would love to bring in. The worry is finally getting cap space. If a De Koning moves, getting a pick in. He's out of contract. He's not a free agent. You're going to have to trade. I don't know if that's the right move. Getting a pick 7 or 8 potentially, and half the cap space from De Koning and throwing that away immediately. I don't love it.
Yeah, I'm getting Houston PTSD with that one. But yeah, like at the right price, of course. Really nice player at a good age. Yeah, the Ollie Hollands thing is definitely fascinating. Like, it's hard for me to go back now to the preseason, but was he training with the defenders? Oh, he played a couple of halfback games last year at the end of the season, didn't he? Yeah, I still just don't see it as the place that he's going to play his career. So if that's true, then halfback's definitely a position of need.
If it is, then I guess the natural thing would be Lucas Camporelli. Potentially on the other wing, taking that spot, which we've seen some positive signs already. Feels like wing is a pretty easy position to find. Weirdly, so is halfback. That should be a very easy thing to find in the draft. Yeah. How many teams just pick, not many teams actually trade for halfbacks, spend a lot of salary on that position. You seem to be able to get one in the draft. We kind of haven't done that. We've gone the free agent. We've gone the trading route. Sard, Williams, even Newman to a degree. Feels like a very simple thing that you can find someone somewhere. I think that forward line is my bigger concern, really. Question mark on Elijah. What's going on with him? Is he actually a viable long-term prospect? If he's not, alarm bells. Cody Walker seems to be that kind of hybrid forward midfielder in a few years.
Yeah.
That can kind of play there. But looking through those out of contract players, the best kind of small forward that is gettable is Roses from Gold Coast. And he's a name that's been on the board for years now on this podcast. Didn't excite us back then. Not getting any more exciting now. It makes me think we really need this De Koning draft pick if we're wanting to, over these next few years, evolve this squad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on forward line. Like, as we prepare to transition back into the present day, I'm looking at this team that is about to run out on the weekend, and I'm like, who's kicking goals? Where is the winning score coming from here?
And that's the perfect pivot. Let's talk a little bit about North before we wrap this up. I don't think we need to delve into too much about it. More simply, a lot of injuries now. Charlie's a test with his calf. Cowan all of a sudden a test with his hamstring to come back. Hudson's out for 4 to 5. Walsh out for 5 to 6. Harry out for 5 to 7. I've ruled Cottrell out for the season. We go from having no one on the injury list to 1 week later, Everyone's out again. We love to see it. What would be your team changes, however? It's a lot of height going out. O'Keefe, definitely. Curnow, maybe. What would your moves be? And is there any others, I guess, just form-related that you're looking to switch with this squad?
I didn't say it on the podcast last week, but I definitely thought it, that I was like, oh, injury list is looking decent. And that was one of my hot takes pre-season, that there wasn't going to be any... we were going to have a week with no one on the injury list except for long-termers. Almost got there. Yeah, there's lots of ways that you could do this, right? I think Young is the obvious one to come in out of any of the talls. So call that the Young for O'Keefe. And then you can have the discussion of whether this is your favorite topic. I know you're going to grimace as I say it, but is this the week to bring in Pito? If you're not feeling confident in a Lemmy. So play Pito as, the elimination final Pito, ruck / centre half forward, or Lemmy. For me, I'd go the Lemmy route if Curnow's not fit, which something tells me he's not going to be.
Is there a world you don't bring in at all? That you say Young pinch hitting and McGovern is enough and you go small and you try to change things up elsewhere? Or is that just so concerning to have Mitch McGovern be your absolute only key forward in that forward line?
I would definitely entertain that idea. The name to come in thinking about that is whether, is it time for Boyd to have another go and then move some magnets around there, whether that means that Ollie plays a different position and move the magnets around there a little bit. I'm not sure who else you would be looking to bring in if not trying someone like Lemmy. So I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, I think in that route, I'd maybe throw out a Flynn Young. Seems to be playing okay in the twos. Maybe it's too early. Maybe just genuinely let this kid develop. However, is that a dynamic player that isn't just your traditional small forward like a Durden straight in is? Does that allow just a bit more dynamism in that forward line? Someone who can kind of float a little bit higher and just move into those kind of spare spaces. But yeah, I personally want to go full nuts here and just say play Harry Lemmy. Let's just see it.
Me too.
I guess as well, it's easier because I'm not coaching and my career isn't on the line, which makes me think it's Pito. Because let's be honest, if you're genuinely, you need to win these. If you lose to North, that could be your job. Would you risk that on developing Harry Lemmy and seeing what he's got? Or knowing at least Pito, you know what he can do. Tom can play a little bit more forward. Young can stay forward the whole time. It feels like the obvious thing, but it's not what I want to see as a fan. I'm losing hope on this season a little bit. So I want to just see what Lemmy has to know if he's someone we can keep on the list next year or whether we need to find another developing key forward.
But you agree that it would be Young. If it's only O'Keefe, say Curnow plays, you'd go Young over Pito.
Yeah, I think Young's the obvious in. Other players like Billy Wilson starting to be on my radar a little bit, really starting to string some good form together. Just not sure there's the obvious out for him. Sard's annoying me a little bit with his dump kicking. There was one moment where I think it might have been Akers standing next to him that berated him for not giving him the handball because Sard was facing the goals and he spun around and then kicked it without really looking.
Yeah.
And Akers was standing in the perfect position, and that's kind of got us into trouble a little bit. So that's kind of an area, but probably not ideally the week to do it. But yeah, I think it's all going to be around whether Charlie plays or not. And I agree with you. I don't think he gets up for this.
Yeah.
The weird wording around the calf tightness and awareness doesn't fill me with a lot of joy.
It's a little easier to swallow the injury report with him as a test, isn't it? Than all Walsh, Mackay, him all definitely missing. So,
yeah. And knowing Harry's out for longer, if it is, whether I know you always say he got through the fitness test, it's fine. Is this a week where you say, I don't care if he passed the fitness test? We're questioning it. We've already got Harry out. We can't be even close to an injury here. just rest him for a week.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what my gut's telling me.
Yeah, I think that's how I feel as well. But that is going to wrap up this episode. Hopefully you got a lot out of it, because I'll be honest, when I was writing the run sheet, I was thinking, what can we talk about? The West Coast game was the exact same thing we've seen time in, time out. So it was nice to do a little bit of a different exercise and try to look at how is this list cooked? I feel like we have found that it isn't completely. There is some youth to rejuvenate if that's the route we need to go over these next couple of seasons. It's just about those little additions that we already knew we needed to make and nailing those. But let us know your thoughts on everything we covered. If you're watching on YouTube, drop them in the comments down below. If you're listening through podcast and audio form, head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner. And fingers crossed, Lockie, finally we can not only just talk about a win, but a 4-quarter dominant performance where it's not the same thing. It's not just one quarter and fading away. It's like what we did to North earlier this season. Hopefully it's a sunny Melbourne afternoon at the MCG, Carlton North at the G. That is something that might not happen for another 100 years. So soak it in, enjoy it. Up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.